Welcome to Forming a Regional Cooperative. You can do it. We have a panel with us today. On my left is Dr. Hamman, who's the founder of the Texas Quality Initiative. On my far right is Dr. Rich Prager, who is STS Vice President and Project Director of the Michigan Society of Thoracic and Cardiovascular Surgery. And on my immediate right, Dr. Jeff Rich, past President of the STS, former Director of CMS, and founder of the Virginia Quality Initiative. I'm Jimmy Edgerton, and I chair the Quality Committee for the Texas Quality Initiative. We hope to have a program for you, giving you the basics, the skeleton of how you can form a regional quality initiative. Y'all are welcome to contact any of us at any time along the way. We're going to start out with how do you gain the buy-in to form an initiative, and Dr. Rich is going to start with that discussion.
Sure, thanks, Jimmy. And welcome, everybody. Forming an initiative, I think we talk about regional initiatives, but it really all starts locally. I mean, think about yourself, your own practice. How many of your partners and coworkers actually buy into what you're thinking about in terms of quality measurement and performance benchmarking and then adhering to those? But beyond that, we found value in Virginia in reaching out to our colleagues, both locally and then in the state as well. And sharing best practices and forming those regional collaboratives have provided great value for all of us, and I'm sure for Rich and for you in Texas as well. So the buy-in is hard because in particular, and not so much here, but perhaps in Texas and in Michigan, you have competition. So one would say, why would I want to share my best practices with my competitor? Well, the answer is you can both benefit from each other, because we have found through time that not everybody has the greatest ideas all the time, and so it will rotate among the states. So getting buy-in has to start with showing value of a collaboration, value of your mission for your own institution and for yourself personally, and realizing that there's a learning network out there that you could contribute to and collaborate with and receive great information from. So buy-in is really showing value in that cooperative event for quality improvement for our patients, and that's why we're here.
In Texas, we're funded by the hospitals, and so I had to generate a statement that shows buy-in for the hospitals. And in fact, what we've been able to accomplish there has been a reduction in mortality observed versus expected. So what we've been able to show through our efforts has been about a 40% reduction in our mortality in not only coronary bypass, but other types of operations. And if you believe the quality leads to cost savings, then I think that is an adequate argument. And that's what we've done in Texas.
Well, certainly a prerequisite is to get the buy-in of the surgeons and the institutions who are going to contribute the data. But having done that, you have to put some form and structure to that. And Dr. Prager is very qualified to speak to us about that.
Well, I think in Michigan we've been fortunate, but basically I think the platform should be, one, you can do it. Two, there are multiple structures. All our structures are a little different. And I think that's very important for everyone to understand. And in Michigan, we went through two phases. The first was all the hospitals were playing voluntarily, and we basically had very little funding, but we had just enough and contributed just enough to get an STS book for data. And we started it in a very simple manner of getting a book and putting all the sites in it, and it was all encrypted and blinded. And we did this for about 6 years. And then there was a major kind of threshold change. In Michigan, the largest private payer, or the largest payer, is Blue Cross Blue Shield. And they had started other collaboratives, specifically one for interventional cardiology, to cut down complications such as bleeding and acute kidney injury. And they offered us funding, basically to create an infrastructure. And so we became more formalized when, after 3 years of discussions, we decided to accept the funding, understanding they didn't want the results, they didn't want anything, but they felt, just as you've shown in Texas and you've shown in Virginia, that if we improve quality, first of all, it saves them money, their constituents, their patients do better. And so more people would like their insurance. So that said, they funded a structure for us, which basically has a coordinating center to run the collaborative. And I think if we could get more payers or more hospitals to, put into a pot to do this, many more of you could do this, and make it easier for yourselves. You need money to get the reports. You need money to warehouse your data. You need someone to drill your data. And so we set up a construct that has a coordinating center. We happen to have 4 people, basically 4. Well, we have more than 4 now, but we started with 3 people in there just to coordinate, get the data, things like this, and set up committees. We set up a quality committee with 1 surgeon from every site who represents that site and is the spokesperson, as well as 1 data manager. And that really became the platform for us.
Is there difficulty getting busy surgeons to participate in committee structure?
It's a good question. Today, I would say that at our quality committee meetings, which is the night before every quarterly meeting, we will have almost 80 to 90% of people come. The reason is we unblind data, and you have quality metrics to meet, and one of those, frankly, is meeting attendance to get the additional funding. So we have a stick and a carrot, if you will. It is working, but frankly, I think most people would come anyway because they want to see their results. They see them basically about the same time the book comes out. Unfortunately, as we know, you don't open your STS book. It's 170 pages of a PDF. But if you put a slide up and you show everybody's hospital, and by the way, it's named, people want to be there.
We've similarly found that people are incented to come because they want the data, they want the feedback,
Right.
and they accelerate that desire when the data is unblinded.
Yes.
I think probably all of us would agree that the easiest course for data sharing is if everyone participates in the STS database. But if you have that, you have a bunch of hospitals that have STS databases being submitted to the STS. How do you formulate that data into one data pool so you can analyze it, compare it? How do you do that, Baron? How do you share and organize a clinical database?
Well, that's a great question. What we've done in Texas is, though we depend on our own individual surgeons for creative ideas, for research, and valid questions, we warehouse our data both at the STS, of course, and through a separate vendor who serves as a third party so that when we get a report back, we can get a composite report back. Now, before we send those flat files to the STS, we also retain a file so that we have some individual markers and some individual parameters that we're interested in for the purpose of research and other sorts of activities. So the files are distributed 1, 2, 3, but we warehouse our data ourselves at home and we police it ourselves at home.
So before it goes off to the STS, you send it into your own third-party vendor that then feeds it back to you, so you've got all your regional cooperative data instantly.
Correct.
Outstanding. We know that that data is more valuable if we can link it to cost data, to administrative data. Just a quick example, if I wanted to know how many patients from my hospital were readmitted, I'm going to get a truer number if I know from the whole region. I may not know if they bounced into another hospital. An administrative or cost database can help you learn that and other things. Dr. Rich, how do you do that? How do you, is an administrative database important, and how do you link to it?
So that was one of our challenges, and one of our primary goals with the Virginia Cardiac Surgery Initiative was not only improve quality, but to undergo payment reform and to look at cost reductions within the state. We felt that delivery of health care was getting too expensive and that we, as cardiac surgeons and the institutions that we worked in, could help with that. So we decided to go 2 ways. One, on the clinical side, to use the national database, the STS database, obviously, for the reasons articulated, and then to use a national financial database, the CMS database, which is formulated from UBO4 data that's submitted by each hospital.
What is UBO for?
Unified billing in the year 2004.
Thank
So it's updated all the time. So UBO4 is just the acronym for the file. So the file is collected and then it's obtained from CMS, and we link it to our patients. It's all de-identified, so we have a particular algorithm that links it in a way that's not identifiable, but is 99.9% accurate. So we use it to look at the cost of delivery of care. We create quality initiatives that are based on either poor quality, and we can look at their impact on cost or just their impact on patients, or high cost procedures, and we look at resource utilization so that we can reduce resource utilization and try and create cost and value. For instance, atrial fibrillation was one of our first initiatives. We saw that in our database. It cost average about $9,000 per patient, prolonged stay, IV heparin, cardioversion, you name it. And we underwent a best practice. We identified the institution with the best practice, implemented that statewide, and reduced atrial fibrillation down to about 16% from the 22% right now. It was a little lower, but we saved almost $40 million, or $24 to $40 million, depending on what time frame, to the institutions. We did that with resource utilization, blood transfusions. We saved $44 million in 18 months by implementing a reduction in transfusion protocol in our state. I personally, in my own institution, within 4 months, we saved almost $1 million. And it was very fascinating because the hospitals love it. It's a way to get together. I mean, if you're not on a productivity scale for RVU generation and you're hospital employed, you're also being looked at your costs. And this is a way to identify yourselves as high quality, low cost institutions, because you have no choice right now with current regulation. That's how we're going to get paid, based on performance and quality and reductions in costs and providing value for the service for the patients and the payers.
Thank you. Just to clarify for me, when you say cost, are we talking hospital cost, hospital charges, or payer costs?
Yeah, no, excellent question, because every time I say cost, everybody say, well, you can't look at the cost of the hospital. How do you get that? Well, it's really the cost to the payer, because what's important here is what the payer is actually paying for that care. And when I tell you your cost is $10,000, that's from my perspective as the payer, CMS. And you take that information, you and your institution, if you deliver the care for $7,000, then you know that you've already generated $3,000 in profit, which then you can do to create innovative programs within your institution, or head share savings programs, or hire more PAs, do some infrastructure development. So the costs are really the payer cost, which is what we're talking about. Everything you say, costs are escalating. Well, it's payer cost. It's not institutional cost.
And that data is critical, because if you don't generate a margin, you don't take care of patients. Let me give you one last question along that line. With the STS database was disruptive innovation. All the other societies are chasing after what the STS has done with its database. But it may have a shortcoming in that it's hard for us to get 5-10-year mortality. Tell me about that. Can you get that out of that data?
Out of our data, no. Out of the STS database, no, because it's 30 days, as we all know. It goes out to 30 days. So we're in the process now in the state of Virginia to working with getting the Social Security Death Index, which provides us with longitudinal mortality. And we're also working with the state to get all of the data on readmissions. And for each individual patient, we can tell if they've been readmitted to the hospital over time. And we're going to use that in collaboration with our cardiology colleagues to look at longitudinal costs and whether the patients live or die using the Social Security Death Index. So as it stands right now, we can't do it, and it's really sort of the next initiative that we have within the state of Virginia, and I'm sure that Rich feels the same way, and you in Texas do as well.
Well, you're leading the way in that for us. We're anxious to learn feedback from you as we move forward. It should be said that anytime you have these data sharing agreements, fundamental to that is an agreement of all parties for non-disclosure, and that none of this data will be used for competitive marketing. If we don't have that, it destroys the initiative. I think one of the things that's important when you start a quality cooperative is to prove an early success, even if you contrive for success. When we started in Texas, we undertook a very difficult project. Our first look at our data showed there was a high mortality for isolated cab. Well, we didn't believe that, so we had to look again. And once we went through all the stages of grieving and realized that was true, we undertook that initiative. That took us 2 years to attack that. And that was a little long. Had I had that to do all over again, I would have attacked a smaller project, contrived for early success, because everyone's watching. In our case, they're kicking in money, and I want to give them a success early. What we've entered in now is 3 projects devised to both increase quality and decrease costs. Luckily, quality projects almost always decrease cost. Those are reduction in readmission, reduction in stroke, and reduction in blood product utilization. So that's just a point that I wanted to make about where do you go first with that initiative. We have to keep these initiatives paid for. We've done it 3 different ways. Dr. Prager, you've commented on that a little bit. Do you have any further comments about the Michigan initiative and how you're paying for it?
Well, the 3 different, we've had 2 models in Michigan, and much of our money comes from the Blues, who are generous enough to cover basically all the patients we operate on, even though they're not all Blue Cross Blue Shield covered. And so there's a spin-off for this for every insurer, frankly, and obviously for the patients. I don't have any unique insights other than I think, frankly, surgeons need to come together and get an understanding and then talk to hospitals, talk to insurers. I hate to say it, but philanthropic money. I mean, these are critical endeavors on our part. And I think there are many different models, but you can't do what they're doing, what you're doing, and what we're doing to the degree and have the data and parse the data without some funding for it.
Dr. Rich, how do you pay for this initiative in Virginia?
We're totally self-funded. We started 20 years ago. We went out and solicited money from each institution and each surgeon in the state, raised enough money to create our database that we were able to use with costs in it, and we remain self-funded. There's a fee to each hospital and each practice on an annual basis to stay in the initiative. We've had some third-party help from Anthem at one point, but that was just a one-time donation, and we're looking for external funding as well, you know, with other resources, because it is expensive to go on, but we currently stay totally self-funded.
And what percentage of surgeons are willing to kick in?
They all do, or
They
else
all
they're
do.
not in an initiative.
Dr. Hamman?
Texas, we're self-funded, and we're pretty proud of that, actually.
We're a little independent in Texas.
A little bit, but the very good point is that the hospitals themselves pay for this initiative. The surgeons don't actually pay into ours, and we've had great success with the enthusiasm. And you know, our early success really was the decrease in isolated mortality, isolated coronary bypass mortality. Most people didn't believe it, but as it continued to drop, we've had increasingly popular and avid buy-in to the program.
I like the idea of the surgeons having some skin in the game.
Yeah, having skin in the game is important, and you know, you have to say, well, how do you get them to agree to that? Well, if you look at some of our early initiatives, there's tremendous cost savings. If you're hospital employed and your hospital is pressuring you to help reduce costs, the hospitals love this database because they see what we're doing on an annual basis and realizing that what we're doing is an initiative for quality improvement is actually cost reducing as well. And the surgeons love it because some of them are hospital employed, a lot of them now in the state of Virginia, 15 to 17 practices. And so they may have part of their salary attached to performance and financial performance. And believe me, the regulation with the new regulation, MIPS and MACRA, repeal of the SGR, I know there's a lot of acronyms, but we're all going to be scored on our ability to reduce costs and improve quality. So this is a perfect tool. It's a clinical financial tool for everybody, and once they realize that, they're willing to pay for it. It's a small price to pay.
We encourage you to try it home because you can do it, and you can call any of us. Our time is growing very short, but before we leave you, I want to tell you where we failed. So just quickly, and then closing comments. Just quickly down the line without expounding upon it, let's each throw out one area where we failed early. Dr. Prager?
What I would say is we started to get big very quickly, and if you can keep, if you will, intimacy with your surgical colleagues and maybe one other person from that hospital rather than having it get too big, I think you're more likely to succeed. And then keeping the momentum, I think, is a second challenge.
Dr. Rich?
I think early on, everybody remained too siloed, the hospitals and the surgeons, and until we formulated a plan, a clinical financial tool that showed value for both parties involved, that was fine. The other failure was what you were articulating, was creating a project that's too big. That's why we started with atrial fib reduction.
Doable.
Because that's something that's not too sensitive to everybody. It feels okay. It feels like something we ought to be doing. And that was an early, easy win for us. And so we choose a bigger project early on, and it stumbled. So choosing a smaller project early on.
You're to be
was-
commended that you started with that and were able to maintain momentum in, because that's not low-hanging fruit.
I
I
would say
would-
that our early failure in Texas was transparent communication. When we received our package and saw that we weren't as good as we thought, we were hesitant to publish that and let everybody in on the issues and the problems. I would say that was our early failure. But after 2 years, I think we're very, very clear and transparent.
And I would list as one of our early failures that we failed to dedicate enough time and enough personnel to publishing outcomes, because that will really give the initiative life and popularize it around the country. We have 3 or 4 articles in print now, and we plan to triple that in the course of the next year by dedicating the time and the resources to do that. Gentlemen, thank you all. Any closing comments?
The only thing I would say in the last 5 seconds is those articles, I mean, none of us went into this for academic scholarship. What these articles do is help other people. At least I believe. I mean, we're...
I do. I mean,
It helps other
the
people.
Clark paper today was a
Yes.
perfect example. Risk score for tricuspid valve replacement. That was done as a collaboration between collaborations between Michigan and Virginia. And it's very valuable clinical information that's never been done. And it was because of having our very facile databases working together as 2 collaboratives working together as a single one, we were able to generate that.
Dr. Hamman, closing comment?
I will say that it takes a lot of encouragement, and I leaned on both of you to help us get started in Texas. And so if you're interested in starting one in another part of the country, please feel free to call us. We will come and help, give lectures, guidance, and all the advice that you can tolerate.
So our message then is it's important. It improves the quality of the care of your patients. You can do it. Both these gentlemen came and helped us when we started, and you can call on us. Thank you for listening.